his final days, Joel Goldsmith whispered words that would change everything you believe about spiritual healing and consciousness. These weren't just teachings, they were his deepest revelations about the secret that transforms ordinary minds into instruments of divine power and unlimited healing. What he shared contradicts everything traditional religion taught him. It goes beyond positive thinking, beyond prayer as most know it, beyond visualization and affirmation. This secret unlocks the very mechanism through which consciousness itself becomes the healing force that dissolves all limitation instantly. The revelation is simple yet profound. I of myself can do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. But what Joel discovered in his final hours was how to actually activate this principle instantly, not just understand it intellectually or hope it might work someday. This isn't another technique to add to your spiritual toolkit. This is the master key that makes every other practice work effortlessly. When you understand what Joel realized in those sacred final moments, everything changes. Your health, your relationships, your abundance, your very experience of being alive. For decades, Joel searched for the missing link between spiritual truth and practical transformation that actually works in daily life. He studied with mystics, healed thousands of people, wrote revolutionary books, yet something remained hidden until those precious final moments when clarity struck like lightning through his consciousness. He realized that most seekers, including himself for years, were trying to use consciousness to get something from God. They were approaching spirituality like a cosmic vending machine. Put in enough prayer, meditation, and positive thinking, and get out healing, abundance, and happiness. But the secret he uncovered was the complete opposite. How to let consciousness reveal that you already are the very thing you seek. You don't need to get health because you are perfect life itself. You don't need to attract abundance because you are infinite supply expressing. This isn't about asking, begging, demanding, or even affirming. It's about recognizing the I am that has always been present, waiting patiently behind every problem, every lack, every fear, ready to dissolve them all through simple recognition of what has always been true about your real nature. Joel's last words weren't spoken to crowds or recorded for posterity. They were whispered in the sacred silence of his transition, heard only by consciousness itself. Yet these words contain the master key that unlocks every spiritual mystery you've ever encountered throughout your entire spiritual journey. He discovered that every healing, every demonstration of supply, every moment of deep peace comes through one simple practice. Stop trying to be spiritual and recognize that spirituality is trying to be you. This recognition changes everything instantly because it aligns you with what you already are. The technique is so simple that the intellectual mind rejects it as too easy. So profound that it works when nothing else will. So natural that you've been using it unconsciously your whole life. You just didn't know how to access it deliberately when you need it most. Most people spend years studying complex spiritual systems, learning elaborate techniques, trying to purify themselves enough to deserve God's attention. But Joel's final secret bypasses all of that struggle and reveals the truth that has always been present. You are the divine consciousness you've been seeking outside yourself. What Joel realized in those final sacred moments was that every person carries within them the complete solution to every problem they will ever face, not as potential that might develop someday, but as present reality waiting to be acknowledged through a specific shift in consciousness that anyone can make. This shift doesn't require years of study, perfect faith, elimination of all doubt, or any special qualifications. It requires only one thing: the willingness to stop being the person who has the problem and start being the consciousness that dissolves it naturally and effortlessly. The secret practice he discovered allows you to make this shift in seconds, not lifetimes. It works whether you believe it or not, whether you feel worthy or not, whether you understand it completely or not. Truth operates regardless of our opinions about it or our feelings of readiness. This is why Joel's approach was so revolutionary. He discovered that consciousness healing doesn't depend on your faith level, your spiritual development, or your worthiness. It depends only on recognition of what you already are, the very consciousness that creates, sustains, and dissolves all experiences. Margaret came to Joel's final seminar carrying 20 years of chronic pain that no doctor could explain or heal. Traditional medicine failed her completely. Psychology offered no lasting relief. Even years of metaphysical study brought only temporary comfort before the agony returned stronger than ever before. She had tried everything: medications that stopped working, surgeries that made things worse, therapies that helped for a few days before the pain reasserted its dominance over her life. She was desperate and running out of hope when she heard about Joel's revolutionary approach to consciousness healing. Within minutes of learning Joel's final technique, something shifted in her consciousness. Not the pain itself, that remained exactly the same. But her relationship to the pain transformed completely. She stopped being Margaret with pain and became pure awareness, observing an experience that couldn't touch her true nature. 3 days later, she woke without pain for the first time in decades. But more importantly, she had discovered her true identity as consciousness itself. The awareness that remains forever untouched by any physical or emotional experience that passes through it like clouds through an endless sky. Robert had lost everything in a business collapse that destroyed his reputation and left his family facing foreclosure. Desperation led him to Joel's teachings, but intellectual understanding of spiritual principles couldn't pay the bills or restore his shattered confidence in his ability to provide for his family. He understood the metaphysical laws intellectually. He could quote scripture about God's abundance. He affirmed prosperity daily and visualized success regularly. But none of these practices translated into practical results when creditors called and bills accumulated faster than his depleted resources could handle. When Robert learned to apply Joel's final secret, he stopped trying to fix his circumstances from the position of a desperate person and started recognizing himself as the consciousness in which both prosperity and poverty appear as temporary experiences, neither touching his true infinite nature. Within weeks, unexpected opportunities emerged from nowhere. Former clients returned with new projects. New partnerships formed naturally. But the real transformation was Robert's unshakable peace, knowing that his true identity as infinite consciousness could never be threatened by any external circumstance or financial condition. Sarah struggled with depression that psychiatric medications couldn't lift and therapy couldn't cure permanently. Years of counseling helped her understand her patterns, but couldn't break the cycle of dark moods that seemed to control her life completely. She felt trapped in a mind she couldn't escape or heal. The depression wasn't just sadness. It was a heavy blanket of hopelessness that made simple daily activities feel overwhelming. She had tried antidepressants, therapy, exercise, meditation, prayer, and every self-help approach she could find, but nothing provided lasting relief from the mental anguish. Joel's final teaching showed Sarah how to stop identifying with the depressed thoughts and emotions and start identifying with the awareness that observes them. She learned to be the sky in which all weather patterns pass, never touched by storms that seem so real from inside them. The depression didn't vanish overnight, but Sarah's relationship to it transformed immediately. She discovered an inner stillness that no mood could disturb, the I am that exists prior to all psychological states, and remains eternally free from every condition that seems to control human experience. These transformation stories share one common element that makes them so powerful. Each person discovered their true identity as consciousness itself, not as a person trying to use consciousness to improve their situation. This recognition is the foundation of all genuine healing and lasting peace that Joel spent his lifetime teaching. Joel's final secret works because it aligns you with what you already are, not what you hope to become through spiritual practice. It reveals the perfection that has always been present, hidden only by the mistaken belief that you are something other than pure awareness expressing as individual consciousness. The people who experience these transformations didn't become more spiritual or develop new powers. They simply recognized what had always been true but was temporarily forgotten. They are the very consciousness they were seeking to contact, please, or convince to help them with their problems. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom, and comment. What healing journey resonated most with your heart today? Beyond the primary recognition of your true nature as consciousness, Joel discovered complementary practices that accelerate and deepen this realization. These aren't separate techniques but expressions of the same fundamental truth from different angles, like facets of a diamond reflecting the same pure light. The first supporting practice he called the witness position. Instead of being caught in experiences and identified with them completely, you learn to observe them from the unchanging center of awareness. This creates immediate space between you and any problem or limitation that seems to control your life. Practice this now. Notice that you are aware of reading these words. You are not the words themselves, not the thoughts about them, not even the person reading them, but the awareness in which all of these appear. This awareness is your true identity, infinite, eternal, and inherently free. This witness position isn't detachment or dissociation from life. It's the most intimate connection possible, recognizing yourself as the very consciousness in which all experiences arise, unfold, and dissolve naturally without resistance or attachment to outcomes. Joel's second supporting technique involves recognizing that every problem exists only in time, while your true nature exists outside of time altogether. When you shift identity from the time-bound person to timeless awareness, problems lose their reality and power to affect your essential being. This practice dissolves worry instantly, because worry requires a future that doesn't exist in pure awareness. It heals regret, because regret requires a past that has no reality in present consciousness. Only now is real, and now is always perfect, complete, and lacking nothing. Try this. Feel your way into this present moment so completely that past and future disappear entirely. In this eternal now, what problem could possibly exist? What lack could be real? What fear could have any foundation when only perfection is present in timeless awareness? This is your natural state of being, always available, always perfect, always free from every condition that seems to trouble the time-bound mind. The more you rest in this timeless awareness, the more naturally your life reflects this perfection in practical ways. The third technique Joel perfected in his final years involves using gratitude not as a feeling or emotion, but as recognition of what already is. Instead of being thankful for what you hope to receive in the future, you become grateful for the completeness that already exists within you right now. This isn't positive thinking or affirmation designed to attract good things. It's acknowledgement of the infinite supply, perfect health, and unlimited love that consciousness itself is. You don't have these qualities as possessions. You are these qualities expressing as individual awareness. Begin practicing this recognition. I am grateful that I am infinite supply itself. I am grateful that I am perfect health itself. I am grateful that I am unlimited love itself. Feel the truth of these statements in your being. They are not hopes for the future, but facts about your present nature. This recognition gratitude bypasses the usual spiritual trap of seeking to become what you already are. It establishes you immediately in the truth of your being, and allows that truth to express naturally in your daily experience without force or struggle. These complementary practices work together to establish you more firmly in the recognition of your true nature as consciousness itself. The witness position creates space between you and limiting experiences. Timeless awareness dissolves problems at their source, and recognition gratitude reveals the completeness you have always been. None of these techniques require perfection or even belief to work effectively. They operate through the simple willingness to experiment with truth and see what happens when you approach life from your true position as consciousness, rather than as a limited person seeking improvement. Start with whichever practice feels most natural and accessible to you right now. Let it lead you deeper into the others organically. The goal isn't to master techniques, but to recognize what you already are, the consciousness in which all techniques appear and disappear. Remember, you're not trying to become something new or develop spiritual powers you don't have. You're recognizing what has always been true but was temporarily forgotten. This recognition is the healing power that Joel discovered transforms every aspect of life naturally and effortlessly. Even with perfect understanding of these principles, most people encounter predictable obstacles that can temporarily derail their practice and make them doubt the effectiveness of consciousness recognition. Joel faced these same challenges and developed specific ways to work with them without fighting or trying to overcome them forcefully. The first common obstacle is doubt, the mind's insistence that this approach is too simple to work for serious problems like chronic illness, financial ruin, or deep emotional trauma. Doubt is natural and doesn't disqualify you from success. Joel learned to welcome doubt as another experience arising in consciousness. When doubt appears, don't try to eliminate it or convince yourself it's wrong through positive thinking. Simply notice, I am aware of doubt arising in consciousness. You are not the doubt. You are the consciousness in which doubt appears and disappears naturally, like clouds in an endless sky. Doubt actually serves a purpose in consciousness recognition. It shows you where you're still identified with the person mind rather than resting in your true nature as awareness itself. Use doubt as a reminder to return to the witness position rather than fighting it as an enemy. Another frequent challenge is the tendency to measure progress by external circumstances rather than inner recognition of your true nature. Students often abandon the practice when immediate physical or financial changes don't appear, not realizing that inner transformation always precedes outer demonstration in consciousness. Joel emphasized that consciousness shift happens instantly when recognition occurs, but its reflection in the world of form may take days, weeks, or months, depending on various factors beyond your personal control. The key is maintaining the recognition regardless of external appearances or seeming delays. Practice patience by remembering that you are consciousness itself, not a person waiting for consciousness to improve your life circumstances. From this perspective, you already have everything because you are everything, expressed as individual awareness experiencing itself in time and space. The external world reflects consciousness, but consciousness doesn't depend on the external world for its completeness or perfection. Your well-being comes from recognizing what you are, not from getting what you want from outside sources that can be gained or lost. The third major obstacle Joel identified is the habit of returning to problem consciousness when faced with challenging situations. Under pressure, we automatically revert to identifying with the person who has problems rather than the consciousness that dissolves them naturally through simple recognition. This is normal human conditioning, not spiritual failure or lack of development. Joel taught that each return to problem consciousness is an opportunity to practice the recognition again. Every challenge becomes a doorway deeper into your true identity as limitless awareness that remains unaffected by conditions. When you catch yourself in problem thinking, gently ask, who or what is aware of this problem thinking? This question immediately shifts you back to your true position as consciousness itself, naturally restoring peace and clarity to handle any situation from wisdom rather than fear. Don't judge yourself for forgetting your true nature temporarily. The fact that you notice the forgetting means you're already remembering. Each recognition strengthens your natural resting place in consciousness rather than in personal identity with its endless concerns and limitations. These obstacles aren't meant to be eliminated but transcended through understanding their nature as temporary experiences in consciousness. Joel's approach was never to fight challenges but to recognize them as opportunities for deeper realization of truth and more consistent resting in your natural state of being. The secret is consistency rather than perfection in practice. Each time you remember your true nature as consciousness, you strengthen that recognition. Each time you forget and return to person identification, you create another opportunity to remember what you really are beneath all conditions. Progress in consciousness. Recognition isn't measured by the absence of challenges, but by your response to them. Do you meet difficulties as a person who has problems, or as consciousness in which problems appear and dissolve naturally? This shift in position changes everything about how you experience life. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices, and comment, which obstacle are you ready to transform now? In Joel's advanced workshops, he taught students how to maintain consciousness recognition while engaged in daily activities and relationships. This integration phase is where the real transformation occurs, when spiritual realization becomes a natural way of living rather than a special practice you do at certain times. The key is learning to perform all activities from the consciousness position rather than the person position. Whether working at your job, relating to family members, handling financial concerns, or dealing with health issues, everything becomes an expression of your true nature as awareness rather than problems to solve. Start with simple activities: washing dishes as consciousness, driving as consciousness, listening to others as consciousness rather than as. In his final days, Joel Goldsmith whispered words that would change everything you believe about spiritual healing and consciousness. These weren't just teachings, They were his deepest revelations about the secret that transforms ordinary minds into instruments of divine power and unlimited healing. What he shared contradicts everything traditional religion taught him. It goes beyond positive thinking, beyond prayer as most know it, beyond visualization and affirmation. This secret unlocks the very mechanism through which consciousness itself becomes the healing force that dissolves all limitation instantly. The revelation is simple yet profound. I of myself can do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. But what Joel discovered in his final hours was how to actually activate this principle instantly, not just understand it intellectually or hope it might work someday. This isn't another technique to add to your spiritual toolkit. This is the master key that makes every other practice work effortlessly. When you understand what Joel realized in those sacred final moments, everything changes. Your health, your relationships, your abundance, your very experience of being alive. For decades, Joel searched for the missing link between spiritual truth and practical transformation that actually works in daily life. He studied with mystics, healed thousands of people, wrote revolutionary books. Yet something remained hidden until those precious final moments when clarity struck like lightning through his consciousness. He realized that most seekers, including himself for years, were trying to use consciousness to get something from God. They were approaching spirituality like a cosmic vending machine. Put in enough prayer, meditation, and positive thinking, and get out healing, abundance, and happiness. But the secret he uncovered was the complete opposite. How to let consciousness reveal that you already are the very thing you seek. You don't need to get health because you are perfect life itself. You don't need to attract abundance because you are infinite supply expressing. This isn't about asking, begging, demanding, or even affirming. It's about recognizing the I am that has always been present, waiting patiently behind every problem, every lack, every fear, ready to dissolve them all through simple recognition of what has always been true about your real nature. Joel's last words weren't spoken to crowds or recorded for posterity. They were whispered in the sacred silence of his transition, heard only by consciousness itself. Yet these words contain the master key that unlocks every spiritual mystery you've ever encountered throughout your entire spiritual journey. He discovered that every healing, every demonstration of supply, every moment of deep peace comes through one simple practice. Stop trying to be spiritual and recognize that spirituality is trying to be you. This recognition changes everything instantly because it aligns you with what you already are. The technique is so simple that the intellectual mind rejects it as too easy. So profound that it works when nothing else will. So natural that you've been using it unconsciously your whole life. You just didn't know how to access it deliberately when you need it most. Most people spend years studying complex spiritual systems, learning elaborate techniques, trying to purify themselves enough to deserve God's attention. But Joel's final secret bypasses all of that struggle and reveals the truth that has always been present. You are the divine consciousness you've been seeking outside yourself. What Joel realized in those final sacred moments was that every person carries within them the complete solution to every problem they will ever face, not as potential that might develop someday, but as present reality waiting to be acknowledged through a specific shift in consciousness that anyone can make. This shift doesn't require years of study, perfect faith, elimination of all doubt, or any special qualifications. It requires only one thing: the willingness to stop being the person who has the problem and start being the consciousness that dissolves it naturally and effortlessly. The secret practice he discovered allows you to make this shift in seconds, not lifetimes. It works whether you believe it or not, whether you feel worthy or not, whether you understand it completely or not. Truth operates regardless of our opinions about it or our feelings of readiness. This is why Joel's approach was so revolutionary. He discovered that consciousness healing doesn't depend on your faith level, your spiritual development, or your worthiness. It depends only on recognition of what you already are, the very consciousness that creates, sustains, and dissolves all experiences. Margaret came to Joel's final seminar carrying 20 years of chronic pain that no doctor could explain or heal. Traditional medicine failed her completely. Psychology offered no lasting relief. Even years of metaphysical study brought only temporary comfort before the agony returned stronger than ever before. She had tried everything. Medications that stopped working, surgeries that made things worse, therapies that helped for a few days before the pain reasserted its dominance over her life. She was desperate and running out of hope when she heard about Joel's revolutionary approach to consciousness healing. Within minutes of learning Joel's final technique, something shifted in her consciousness. Not the pain itself, that remained exactly the same. But her relationship to the pain transformed completely. She stopped being Margaret with pain and became pure awareness, observing an experience that couldn't touch her true nature. 3 days later, she woke without pain for the first time in decades. But more importantly, she had discovered her true identity as consciousness itself. The awareness that remains forever untouched by any physical or emotional experience that passes through it like clouds through an endless sky. Robert had lost everything in a business collapse that destroyed his reputation and left his family facing foreclosure. Desperation led him to Joel's teachings, but intellectual understanding of spiritual principles couldn't pay the bills or restore his shattered confidence in his ability to provide for his family. He understood the metaphysical laws intellectually. He could quote scripture about God's abundance. He affirmed prosperity daily and visualized success regularly. But none of these practices translated into practical results when creditors called and bills accumulated faster than his depleted resources could handle. When Robert learned to apply Joel's final secret, he stopped trying to fix his circumstances from the position of a desperate person and started recognizing himself as the consciousness in which both prosperity and poverty appear as temporary experiences, neither touching his true infinite nature. Within weeks, unexpected opportunities emerged from nowhere. Former clients returned with new projects. New partnerships formed naturally. But the real transformation was Robert's unshakable peace, knowing that his true identity as infinite consciousness could never be threatened by any external circumstance or financial condition. Sarah struggled with depression that psychiatric medications couldn't lift and therapy couldn't cure permanently. Years of counseling helped her understand her patterns, but couldn't break the cycle of dark moods that seemed to control her life completely. She felt trapped in a mind she couldn't escape or heal. The depression wasn't just sadness. It was a heavy blanket of hopelessness that made simple daily activities feel overwhelming. She had tried antidepressants, therapy, exercise, meditation, prayer, and every self-help approach she could find, but nothing provided lasting relief from the mental anguish. Joel's final teaching showed Sarah how to stop identifying with the depressed thoughts and emotions and start identifying with the awareness that observes them. She learned to be the sky in which all weather patterns pass, never touched by storms that seem so real from inside them. The depression didn't vanish overnight, but Sarah's relationship to it transformed immediately. She discovered an inner stillness that no mood could disturb, the I am that exists prior to all psychological states, and remains eternally free from every condition that seems to control human experience. These transformation stories share one common element that makes them so powerful. Each person discovered their true identity as consciousness itself, not as a person trying to use consciousness to improve their situation. This recognition is the foundation of all genuine healing and lasting peace that Joel spent his lifetime teaching. Joel's final secret works because it aligns you with what you already are, not what you hope to become through spiritual practice. It reveals the perfection that has always been present, hidden only by the mistaken belief that you are something other than pure awareness expressing as individual consciousness.
Have you ever wondered why, despite your most earnest prayers and devoted spiritual practices, you still feel disconnected from the divine flow of abundance and peace? What if I told you that the very approach to spirituality most of us have been taught since childhood might actually be blocking the grace and transformation we're seeking? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You pray intensely for financial breakthrough, yet find yourself sinking deeper into scarcity. You earnestly seek healing, only to feel your symptoms intensify. You plead for divine guidance, yet end up more confused than before. There's a profound reason for this spiritual paradox, and it lies at the heart of what Joel Goldsmith discovered after decades of seeking. What most spiritual traditions never reveal is that every time you ask God for something, you're unconsciously affirming its absence in your life. When you pray for healing, you're declaring to the universe, "I am sick." When you beg for abundance, you're proclaiming, "I am in lack." This creates an energetic barrier between you and the very blessings you're trying to receive. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform your relationship with the divine and unlock a flow of grace you never thought possible. The revolutionary insight Goldsmith uncovered challenges everything we've been taught about our relationship with God. Instead of approaching the divine as separate beings, constantly needing to petition for help, what if we recognized ourselves as vessels through which God already lives and moves? This isn't spiritual arrogance, it's a recognition of our true identity as expressions of divine being. Imagine for a moment what would change if you stopped seeing yourself as separated from divine supply and started recognizing that you're immersed in it. What if prayer wasn't about convincing God to act on your behalf, but about aligning your awareness with what's already happening? What if the only thing blocking the infinite flow of divine love, wisdom, and abundance was your own consciousness of separation? The shift from asking God to allowing God to live through you is subtle but profound. Instead of approaching the divine with clenched fists and desperate pleas, imagine opening your hands in quiet receptivity. Imagine recognizing that what you seek is already yours in the spiritual realm, and your only task is to allow it to express through you. This paradigm shift completely transforms every dimension of life, from health and relationships to purpose and prosperity, as we'll discover when you truly let God live through you. Begin to experience a profound transformation in every aspect of your life. Joel Goldsmith, after years of spiritual searching and personal struggle, stumbled upon a revolutionary truth that contradicted everything he had been taught about prayer and divine connection. The secret he uncovered was deceptively simple, yet profound. Stop asking and start receiving. If you found value in these insights on divine receptivity, hit subscribe to join our community of spiritual seekers exploring the path of transformation. This mindset revolution challenges the very foundation of traditional spiritual practice. The divine isn't withholding anything from you, not healing, not abundance, not wisdom, not peace. These gifts aren't locked away in some cosmic vault, waiting for you to say the right words or perform the right rituals. They're already flowing toward you in every moment, like a perpetual stream of grace. Think about it this way. Have you ever considered that your spiritual practice isn't about convincing God to act, but about aligning yourself with what's already in motion? The shift from asking consciousness to receiving consciousness is subtle but transformative. It's like turning your cup right side up so it can actually catch the rain that's been falling all along. To understand this hidden truth more deeply, consider the radio metaphor that Goldsmith often used in his teachings. Divine supply is like a radio broadcast that's continuously transmitting beautiful music throughout the universe. The music doesn't begin when you turn on your receiver. It was always playing. You simply tuned in to what was already present. In the same way, divine abundance, guidance, and healing aren't activated by your asking or pleading. They're already flowing through the fabric of creation. Your spiritual journey is simply about learning to tune in to these ever-present realities, to become a clear channel through which divinity can express itself in your life and in the world. The impact of this revelation goes far beyond theory. When you make this inner shift, decisions that seemed impossible suddenly become clear. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly appear before you. Relationships that were strained begin to heal, not because you're manipulating circumstances or people, but because you're relating from wholeness rather than neediness. The behind-the-scenes work of this practice happens in those quiet moments when you sit in receptive awareness, allowing divine intelligence to flow through your consciousness without interference. You're not creating anything new, you're simply removing the barriers to what has always been there. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by explaining the profound energy shift that occurs when you move from asking to receiving. These two approaches create completely different vibrational signatures in your being, and this makes all the difference in your spiritual journey. When you truly grasp this distinction, you'll understand why traditional prayer sometimes feels like pushing against a closed door, while receptive awareness feels like walking through an entrance that was open all along. Write, "I'm tuning my receiver," in the comments if you're beginning to sense how this shift could transform your relationship with the divine. When you truly understand this perspective, the entire universe reveals itself as an infinite broadcasting station, continuously transmitting divine ideas, abundance, healing, guidance, and love directly to you and through you. These heavenly transmissions don't suddenly activate when you pray. They're perpetually flowing through the fabric of creation. It's not that God isn't answering your prayers, it's that the answer has always been broadcasting on a frequency your consciousness wasn't tuned to receive. This brings us to the heart of Goldsmith's revolutionary insight about practicing the presence. It's not about making God show up in your life or convincing the divine to pay attention to your needs. It's about fine-tuning your awareness to recognize what has always been present. The revelations that come through this practice aren't new information being created on demand. They're eternal truths you're finally able to perceive because you've cleared away the static of separation consciousness. Behind the scenes, the journey of transformation is happening in your energy field, not in some distant heaven. When you're in asking mode, your entire being resonates with an energetic signature of lack, limitation, and separation. There's an underlying desperation that whispers, "I am incomplete without this thing I'm asking for. I need God to give me something I don't have." This vibration actually repels what you're seeking because it reinforces the very separation you're trying to overcome. Receiving consciousness, on the other hand, carries an entirely different energy signature. It vibrates with fullness, gratitude, and union. With the divine source, it quietly acknowledges a profound truth. What God has, I have. What God is, I am. Many people misinterpret this as spiritual arrogance, but it's actually the recognition of your true identity as an expression of divine being. It's understanding that separation from your good was always an illusion created by limited perception. The impact of this mindset shift goes far beyond spiritual theory. When your energy field changes from begging to receiving, your entire experience of reality transforms. Decisions that once paralyzed you with fear become clear expressions of your highest wisdom. Opportunities that remained invisible in your asking consciousness suddenly appear before you, like they've been waiting all along. Relationships that felt strained or broken begin to heal naturally, not because you're manipulating others, but because you're relating from wholeness rather than need. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how to actually practice this receiving consciousness in your daily life. Many spiritual teachings offer beautiful theories, but leave us wondering about the practical application. How do we make this shift from asking to receiving in tangible ways that transform our lived experience? The beauty of Joel Goldsmith's approach is that the practice itself is remarkably simple, though mastering it requires a journey of dedicated attention. Share, "I'm vibrating with divine fullness" in the comments if you're beginning to feel the energetic shift from lack to abundance in your own consciousness. The true revelation in Goldsmith's teaching is that this transformation doesn't happen through elaborate rituals or complex spiritual techniques. The real work unfolds in those quiet moments when you simply sit in receptive awareness, allowing divine intelligence to flow through your consciousness without interference. Many people misunderstand this as passive surrender or spiritual laziness, but nothing could be further from the truth. This receptive state is actually an intensely active spiritual posture. It requires the courage to set aside your habitual patterns of control and manipulation. It demands the discipline to quiet the mind's constant chatter about what you think you need and what you believe is missing. It asks you to release the blueprint you've been trying to impose on life and open yourself to a higher design that may look nothing like what you expected. When you enter this state of spiritual receptivity, you're not becoming less. You're becoming more fully what you were always meant to be, a vessel through which God expresses in the world. This is the hidden truth behind all authentic spiritual traditions. Though it's often buried beneath layers of doctrine and ritual, you are not separate from the divine trying to get its attention. You are the very channel through which divinity seeks to express its infinite nature. The practice itself is remarkably simple. Begin by setting aside just 10 minutes of quiet time each day. Find a comfortable space where you won't be disturbed. Instead of approaching this time with your usual shopping list of needs and wants, the promotion you desire, the relationship you crave, the healing you seek, simply sit in stillness and say within yourself, I am now open to receive all that God is giving me. Subscribe to continue this journey of spiritual awakening with us. Each video explores new dimensions of letting God live through you. Notice the profound paradigm shift in that simple statement. You're not asking for anything specific. You're not trying to manifest particular outcomes. You're simply acknowledging the flow that's already present and opening yourself to it. This is the essence of spiritual receptivity, recognizing that divine substance is already pouring into every dimension of your life. Allow yourself to feel like an open channel. Don't force anything. Don't strain to visualize specific outcomes. Simply be receptive, like the earth receives rain, like your lungs receive air, like a flower receives sunlight. This natural, effortless spiritual breathing creates space for revelation and intuitive wisdom to emerge. It allows the divine to live through you rather than you trying to live through your limited human will. The journey from effort to effortlessness, from struggle to grace, happens gradually as you practice this receptive awareness. Each day, you'll find yourself becoming more attuned to the divine broadcast, more sensitive to the guidance that's always been there, more aligned with the abundance that's your birthright. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by sharing how this principle of receptivity transforms real-world challenges. What does this look like when applied to the struggles we all face? Financial pressure, health concerns, relationship conflicts. The stories of transformation I'm about to share will demonstrate the practical power of letting God live through you in every dimension of life. Write "I am an open channel" in the comments if you're ready to practice this receptive awareness in your own spiritual journey. Let me share with you a powerful real-world example that illustrates the impact of this seemingly subtle shift. Maria had been praying desperately for financial breakthrough for 3 years. Every month brought mounting debt and increasing anxiety. Her asking had become almost violent in its intensity. She would literally shake her fists at heaven, demanding God answer her prayers. Yet her situation only worsened, creating a vicious cycle of spiritual frustration and financial despair. When Maria discovered Joel Goldsmith's teaching on receptivity, her initial reaction was resistance. "If I stop asking, God will forget about me," she protested. But desperation made her willing to experiment. For 30 days, she practiced simply receiving instead of asking. Each morning and evening, she would sit quietly, opening her consciousness to divine supply, affirming, "I allow God's infinite abundance to flow through me now." The journey wasn't instantaneous or magical. The first 2 weeks felt empty, almost frightening. Nothing seemed to be happening externally, but internally something was shifting. The constant knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen. A strange peace replaced her panic. She found herself making decisions from clarity rather than fear. By week 3, unexpected opportunities started appearing. A freelance project here, a debt forgiven there, a forgotten refund check in the mail. 6 months later, Maria's financial situation had completely transformed. The most profound change, however, wasn't in her bank account, but in her relationship with the divine. She no longer approached God as a beggar, but as a beloved child receiving her inheritance. The outer abundance followed the inner shift in consciousness. This same principle of transformation revealed itself in David's healing journey. During his 5-year battle with a chronic health condition, David had exhausted himself with desperate healing prayers. He'd attended every prayer meeting, anointed himself with oil, declared healing scriptures, and done everything he believed would convince God to heal him. Yet his body remained sick, and his asking had become almost angry at God for not responding to his faithful petitions. The turning point came when a friend introduced him to Goldsmith's writings on spiritual healing. The concept startled him at first. What if healing wasn't something God needed to send, but something already present in his true spiritual nature? What if his asking was actually the obstacle preventing him from experiencing the wholeness that was already his? Behind the scenes, a profound mindset revolution was occurring. Instead of begging for healing, he began sitting quietly each day and affirming, "I am open to receive the perfect health that is my divine inheritance." He stopped fighting his symptoms and started resting in the presence of God. This wasn't denial of his condition, it was recognition of a deeper spiritual reality beyond physical appearance. Progress came gradually over many months. Some days were harder than others, but slowly symptoms began shifting. More importantly, fear released its grip on his consciousness. Within a year, medical tests confirmed what David already felt: significant improvement. His doctor called it spontaneous remission. David called it learning to receive what God had already given. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle of divine expression transforms our relationships, often the most challenging area of human experience. Share From Beggar to Beloved in the comments if you're ready to transform your relationship with the divine from one of pleading to one of receiving. The impact of allowing God to live through you extends powerfully into our relationships, often the most challenging area of human experience. Jennifer discovered this truth during a painful period in her marriage. For years, she had prayed fervently, "Please change my husband, make him understand me, fix our communication." Her prayers were focused entirely on asking God to transform her partner and their circumstances, not recognizing how this approach reinforced separation rather than connection. When Jennifer encountered Goldsmith's teaching on receptivity, her initial response was resistance. "If I stop asking God to fix my marriage, it will definitely fall apart," she thought. But her current approach clearly wasn't working, so she decided to experiment with a different path. Instead of asking God to change her husband, she practiced receiving divine love into her own consciousness. Each morning, she'd sit quietly and open herself to receive God's love, not asking for anything external to change, but allowing her inner being to be filled with divine presence. The transformation began subtly. She noticed herself responding differently to her husband, less reactive, more peaceful, genuinely more loving without effort or pretense. The revelation came when she realized that her shift in consciousness was creating ripples that affected their entire relationship dynamic. Over several months, something remarkable happened. As Jennifer changed her consciousness from asking to receiving, her husband began responding differently. Their relationship wasn't magically perfect, but Genuine healing occurred through this journey of inner transformation rather than external manipulation. This same blueprint for transformation revealed itself in Thomas's professional life when his once thriving business collapsed, pushing him to the brink of bankruptcy. His initial response was classic asking consciousness, desperate negotiations with God. I'll serve you forever if you just save my business. I'll give more to charity. I'll be a better person. Please, God, don't let me lose everything. His prayers were filled with fear, bargaining, and the exhausting energy of trying to convince God to rescue him. The mindset revolution arrived unexpectedly when he discovered Goldsmith's revolutionary approach to prayer. Instead of begging God for business success, he learned to practice receptive consciousness, opening himself to divine guidance and supply. I am open to the infinite supply of God. I receive divine wisdom for my next steps. I rest in the knowledge that God's abundance is my abundance. Thomas stopped the frantic energy of asking and entered the peaceful energy of receiving. Almost immediately, his mindset began to transform. The panic subsided, replaced by a quiet confidence. Then the breakthroughs started happening. Ideas began flowing. Connections appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Opportunities manifested in unexpected ways. Within 18 months, Thomas had not only recovered from near bankruptcy, but had created a more successful business, aligned with his true purpose. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how to integrate this receptive consciousness into your daily life. While sitting in meditation is powerful, the true test of allowing God to live through you comes in your moment-to-moment existence, in traffic jams and difficult conversations, in financial decisions and health challenges. Type inner before outer in the comments if you've experienced how internal transformation creates external change in your own life. While dedicated meditation time forms the foundation of this practice, the true art of allowing God to live through you unfolds in the texture of everyday life. Joel Goldsmith offered several powerful techniques that deepen our ability to maintain receptive consciousness throughout our daily experiences. The first is what he called the practice of the presence. Throughout your day, pause frequently and simply acknowledge, God is here. This isn't asking God to show up. It's recognizing the divine presence that's already here. You can practice this while washing dishes, driving to work, sitting in meetings, or waiting in line at the grocery store. These micro moments of divine acknowledgement might sound like, God is here. The infinite is expressing right where I am. Divine intelligence is operating in this situation. What appears to be a simple affirmation is actually a profound reset of your consciousness, training your awareness to remain in receptive mode rather than slipping back into asking mode. Behind the scenes, these brief recognitions gradually rewire your neural pathways, creating new default settings in your brain. Where you once automatically responded to challenges with anxiety and petition, you begin responding with peaceful receptivity. The transformation isn't intellectual. It's a fundamental shift in how you experience reality. Another powerful blueprint Goldsmith offered was what he called the releasing treatment in his spiritual healing work. This concept introduces a radical paradigm shift that challenges our conventional understanding of how healing and transformation occur. In traditional prayer, we identify a problem, illness, financial lack, relationship discord, and ask God to fix it. We treat the condition by focusing intensely on changing it. Joel discovered a more effective approach. We don't treat conditions at all. We treat our consciousness to receive the truth of wholeness that already exists. The distinction is subtle but revolutionary. You're not trying to change reality. You're opening yourself to perceive reality as it truly is in spiritual terms, allowing God's perfect expression to manifest through the situation. When facing any challenge in your life, Instead of asking God to remove it, practice this alternative approach. I release this situation to divine intelligence. I open myself to receive God's perfect solution. I rest in the truth that infinite wisdom is already resolving this in ways I cannot see. This approach creates a gateway for unexpected breakthroughs to emerge that your limited human thinking could never have conceived. This isn't passive resignation or spiritual bypassing. It's active receptivity, a profound recognition that God's intelligence is already at work in your situation. Your asking might actually interfere with divine solutions already in motion. Your receiving allows those solutions to become visible and manifest. It's the difference between pushing a river and floating with its current. Both involve water, but one exhausts you while the other carries you to your destination. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing the biggest obstacle you'll likely encounter when shifting from asking to receiving. This challenge is so universal that nearly everyone experiences it, and overcoming it represents a major milestone in your spiritual journey. Share releasing, not fixing in the comments if you're beginning to understand how treating your consciousness rather than conditions creates space for divine wisdom to work through you. The first and most significant obstacle you'll encounter on this path is the persistent feeling that you're doing absolutely nothing. This discomfort can be so intense that it drives many seekers back to the familiar territory of asking and striving. Asking feels active, powerful, like you're taking charge of your life and spirituality. Receiving, in contrast, often feels passive, lazy, even like you're giving up. Your ego will scream, you have to ask, you have to pursue, you have to make things happen. The revelation that changes everything is recognizing that this discomfort is actually a sign of progress. You're experiencing the dissolution of ego patterns that have dominated your spiritual life. The feeling of doing nothing is actually the feeling of stopping your interference with divine flow. When this resistance arises, and it will, remind yourself, asking is the energy of separation and lack. Receiving is the energy of oneness and abundance. This transformation requires tremendous trust to stop asking and simply open yourself to what God is already giving. You're not being passive, you're being receptive, which is profoundly active in the spiritual dimension. Think of it like learning to float in water. When you first try, your body tenses and you sink. Only when you fully relax and trust do you discover the water naturally supports you. The journey from striving to allowing, from controlling to surrendering, represents the core transformation in spiritual consciousness. Behind the scenes, what's really happening is a fundamental identity shift. For most of your life, you've operated from the belief that you are a separate human being trying to get things from an external deity. This belief creates an unbridgeable gap between you and your good. The mindset revolution Goldsmith uncovered reveals that this gap was always an illusion. The ultimate truth he revealed is this: you are not separate from God trying to receive gifts from an external source. You are the very consciousness of God receiving awareness of your own infinite nature. When you practice receiving, you're not getting something new. You're removing the veil that blocked your recognition of what has always been yours. This is why asking never truly worked. You were essentially asking yourself to give yourself what you already possessed. You were demanding that God provide what God has never stopped providing. The problem was never God's unwillingness to give. The problem was your inability to receive because your consciousness was focused on lack rather than abundance, on separation rather than oneness. The impact of this revelation is immeasurable. Every moment you spend in receptive awareness, you're practicing the truth of your being. You're not becoming spiritual. You're recognizing the spirituality that has always been your essential nature. You're not trying to get God to live through you. You're acknowledging that God has never stopped living through you. Your only obstacle was your unawareness of this eternal truth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this practice of divine receptivity transforms your relationship with life's most challenging circumstances. How does allowing God to live through you change your experience of loss, suffering, disappointment, and limitation? What happens to fear when you truly understand that you are not separate from the infinite source of all good? Put "removing the veil" in the comments if you're beginning to glimpse this ultimate truth about your relationship with the divine. Now you understand the profound wisdom Joel Goldsmith discovered, that your spiritual journey isn't about convincing God to give you things, but about opening yourself to receive what's already yours. This shift from asking to receiving doesn't just change how you pray, it transforms your entire relationship with the divine and with life itself. I create these videos because I truly believe these transformative spiritual insights can change lives. They certainly changed mine. If you've resonated with this message of divine receptivity, I'd love for you to join our community of spiritual seekers who are learning to shift from separation consciousness to oneness awareness. A simple subscription helps you stay connected with teachings that continue to explore this path of spiritual transformation. If this message spoke directly to your heart today, I'd love to know. Simply write "I choose to receive" in the comments to let me know you've made this journey with me to a deeper understanding. Your journey of receptivity is just beginning, and each day of practice brings you closer to experiencing the fullness that has always been within you. A gentle tap on the like button creates ripples that help others discover this teaching too, just as divine abundance flows effortlessly when we open ourselves to receive it. For those ready to take the next step in practicing receptivity, I've created a video that explores the practical daily habits that reinforce receiving consciousness. It's right here on your screen. Click and join me there as we continue this journey together. Remember, you're not becoming something new. You're simply recognizing what you've always been, one with the infinite source of all good. When you truly let God live through you, a great stillness begins to move at the center of your being. The outer world may appear unchanged, the same people, the same tasks, the same hours of the day, but within you, a vast new awareness begins to unfold. No longer are you a separate self striving to make life work. Instead, life itself begins to live you. What once seemed your burden becomes light, for you are no longer carrying it alone. You feel a quiet confidence, not born of will or ambition, but of the knowing that divine wisdom moves through every thought, every act, every breath. Fear loses its authority over you. You find that circumstances no longer dictate your peace, for peace has become your natural state. You cease to struggle against appearances, because you have touched that invisible presence which knows no opposition. When you allow that presence to express itself without resistance, everything around you starts to reflect harmony, order, and effortless grace. The people who once disturbed you now appear as instruments through which divine love teaches patience, compassion, and understanding. There arises a humility, not the weakness of self-denial, but the strength of surrender. You see that nothing real can be added to you, nor can anything true be taken away. Life flows as a continuous gift, unearned yet ever sufficient. You begin to perceive that the same presence which breathes you also beats in the heart of every living thing. This recognition transforms your relationships, for you no longer seek to change others. You see through them to the light that already is. As you abide in this consciousness, your actions become spontaneous and guided. Decisions are made without effort, because they emerge from wisdom deeper than intellect. You find yourself saying, and doing what blesses others without premeditation, as though love itself were thinking and speaking through you. In this state, life becomes prayer without words, service without duty, love without condition. You awaken each morning not to another day of striving, but to another opportunity for God to behold His own creation through you. And in that realization, you understand that nothing has truly changed, except that now you are finally aware of the life that has always been living you. Inner stillness and divine flow, when you surrender self-will, life stops being something you manage and becomes something that moves effortlessly through you. Freedom from fear and circumstance, true peace arises when you recognize that nothing external can disturb the presence that lives within. Strength in surrender, letting God live through you, brings humility, not weakness. It reveals that you already possess all you need in divine sufficiency. Seeing the divine in others, every person becomes a reflection of the same presence, teaching love, compassion, and understanding without judgment. Life is living prayer. When guided by divine consciousness, every action, word, and moment becomes an expression of love. Life itself becomes sacred service. When you release the belief that life depends on your control, a stillness begins to rise within you, silent yet alive, gentle yet powerful. In that stillness, you come to know that everything you once thought you must achieve, arrange, or defend is already being carried by something greater than your personal effort. You begin to see that existence is not a struggle to be won, but a flow to be entered. Life, in its divine intelligence, knows exactly how to unfold, and when you yield to that sacred rhythm, the tension that once ruled your days begins to dissolve. This inner stillness is not inactivity or indifference. It is the purest form of awareness. It is a deep listening that allows divine movement to reveal itself in every moment. You notice that things seem to fall into place without the anxious pushing that once seemed necessary. Where once your thoughts hurried to solve every problem, now inspiration arises like sunlight breaking through clouds. The mind that was once your master becomes a quiet servant, allowing the soul to lead. You sense a harmony between thought and action, between silence and expression. Letting God live through you means recognizing that the same presence which animates the stars and moves the tides also breathes within you. It does not ask you to strive. It asks only that you be still enough to let it express. When the noise of fear and ambition quiets, you begin to hear the language of peace. In that peace, you know what to do without thinking about it. You walk, speak, and act from a depth that is not personal but universal. There is no need to force outcomes, for divine order begins to reveal itself in its own timing. At first, this surrender may feel like loss of control, loss of certainty, loss of the familiar identity that worked so hard to manage life. Yet as you continue to rest in stillness, you discover that what you lost was only the illusion of separateness. You have not lost power, you have entered into true power. The quiet, steady strength of divine flow. This power does not shout or struggle. It moves with a grace that transforms everything it touches. You realize that life has always been carrying you. It was only your resistance that made it feel heavy. The mind loves to plan and calculate, to build walls of safety around the unknown. But the soul knows that real safety is found in trust. When you let God live through you, your trust becomes your anchor. You no longer measure progress by outer results, but by the peace that remains unshaken within you. Even in uncertainty, you sense an invisible hand guiding every step. You see that all things, even challenges, are invitations to remember the presence that cannot fail. The stillness you find is not confined to moments of prayer or meditation. it begins to permeate the whole rhythm of your living. You bring that calm awareness into every conversation, every task, every breath. You move slower, but with more purpose. You speak less, but with more meaning. You start to sense the divine current beneath all experience, and in that awareness, everything becomes sacred. Washing dishes, walking in silence, helping a stranger, or sitting quietly under the sky. In this flow, you discover joy that does not depend on circumstances, peace that is not born of control, and love that asks for nothing in return. You realize that life, when allowed to live through you, becomes its own expression of beauty. The effort that once consumed you transforms into effortless being. You no longer live for God as a distant ideal. You live from God as a living reality within you. When divine life begins to live through you, fear gradually loses its power to command your attention. You no longer tremble before the uncertainties of the world, because something deeper than fear begins to speak within you. That inner voice whispers of a presence that cannot be threatened, a peace that no circumstance can disturb. The storms may still come, the losses, the changes, the unexpected turns, but the center of your being stands unmoved. It is not because you have become stronger through will, but because you have discovered that your true strength was never your own. It has always been the quiet, unwavering presence of the infinite living through you. Fear is born of separation, the belief that you are an isolated being facing an uncertain world. But when you awaken to the realization that there is no separation between you and the divine, fear begins to dissolve. You see that everything you meet, every event and every person, is part of one universal movement of life expressing itself. There is no enemy, no force against you, for there is only one presence, one power, and it moves in harmony. You start to look at what once frightened you with new eyes, and instead of reacting with resistance, you rest in trust. The very situations that used to shake you now become teachers of faith, mirrors in which divine love reveals its perfection. When this awareness deepens, your peace no longer depends on conditions. You do not wait for the world to change before you feel safe, because safety has ceased to be something external. It is now an inner knowing that wherever you are, God is. You could walk through uncertainty, loss, or even the shadow of fear itself, and still feel the calm assurance that the presence within you remains untouched. This does not mean that you deny emotion or pretend to be unaffected. Rather, you recognize emotions as passing waves upon an unmoving ocean. You let them rise and fall without clinging to them, for you know the ocean itself is never disturbed. As this consciousness matures, your relationship to life transforms. You stop living defensively. You stop trying to control the unpredictable flow of events. Instead, you trust that each moment, no matter how it appears, carries divine intention. When something you once called bad happens, you no longer label it as punishment or misfortune. You see it as part of a higher unfolding whose wisdom will be revealed in time. This is the freedom that comes when fear loses its throne. You begin to sense the delicate balance between surrender and participation. You still act, speak, and make choices, but you do so from the still center of peace, not from panic or reaction. The outer world may remain full of motion, but inwardly you remain anchored. It is as though you are sitting in the calm eye of a great storm, watching everything swirl around you without being swept away. This calm is not indifference, it is awareness. It allows you to move through life with clarity and compassion, for your actions are no longer ruled by fear's urgency. People who once provoked you, situations that once overwhelmed you, now become opportunities to practice presence. You begin to understand that the fear you perceived outside was only a reflection of unhealed doubt within. And as divine peace flows through you, even those around you begin to feel it. Your presence becomes a quiet refuge for others without effort. You radiate the calm assurance that everything is already held in divine order. This transformation is not a single event, but an unfolding awareness. Each moment of surrender loosens fear's grip a little more. Each act of trust deepens the silence within. And in that silence, you realize that freedom was never about changing the world outside. It was about awakening to the unchanging presence within, where peace eternally abides. When you finally allow divine life to express itself through you, surrender reveals itself not as defeat, but as the truest form of strength. The ego believes surrender is weakness, that to yield is to lose power. Yet the opposite is true. What you surrender is not your vitality or will. It is the illusion that you must bear life alone. You release the false identity that imagines it must control, manage, and protect itself from a threatening world. In that release, a vast energy rises, silent and radiant. You discover that strength is not born of resistance, but of alignment with the infinite that already sustains all things. This strength in surrender is not loud or boastful. It does not demand to be seen or validated. It lives quietly, like a deep current beneath calm waters. You move through life without the weight of constant striving, because you have discovered that all your effort can never add to what God has already made whole within you. When you are no longer trying to prove your worth, your actions flow from peace rather than from need. You serve, you work, you create, but all of it comes from the effortless joy of being an instrument of divine will. As this humility grows, you begin to sense that every gift you possess, every talent, every insight, every breath is not yours to own but to express. There is a great freedom in this realization. The burden of self-importance fades away, and with it the fear of failure. How can you fail when the outcome belongs to God? How can you fall when the same power that gives you life carries you through every experience? This surrender does not make you passive, it fills you with quiet confidence. You act not from compulsion, but from inspiration. You move when moved, speak when given words, rest when told to be still. There comes a sacred simplicity to life when you no longer cling to outcomes. You stop measuring success by what the world applauds and begin to measure it by the peace that accompanies each act. When things go as you hoped, you give thanks. When they do not, you give thanks still, knowing that divine order often hides behind appearances. You realize that life is not about manipulating events to fit your desires, but about awaking to the perfection that already is. This realization gives birth to contentment so deep that no external gain could increase it and no loss could diminish it. In surrender, you no longer see yourself as the doer. You begin to perceive that all action, all creation, is the movement of one divine life appearing in countless forms. Your hands become the hands of that life, your voice becomes its expression. When you walk, it is that presence walking. When you love, it is that presence loving through you. In this understanding, pride dissolves naturally, not because you try to be humble, but because there is no longer a separate self to take credit. You simply witness God being God through you. And with that witnessing comes peace beyond understanding. The need to defend yourself fades because there is nothing left to protect. You stop living from effort and start living from awareness. You trust that every circumstance serves your awakening and that even what seems painful carries hidden grace. You find rest in the knowledge that life itself is unfolding exactly as it should, and your only task is to stay open, receptive. and faithful to the quiet direction of the Spirit within. This is the strength of surrender, the unshakable power that comes from knowing you are held, guided, and fulfilled by something far greater than yourself. When divine awareness begins to unfold within you, your vision of others changes completely. You no longer look upon people as separate beings with faults to correct, histories to judge, or opinions to resist. Instead, you begin to see through appearances into the quiet radiance that lives behind every face. You realize that the same presence breathing you is breathing them. Every soul, no matter how lost or hardened it may seem, carries within it the same divine essence that you have come to know as life itself. This recognition alters everything. Conflict begins to fade, judgment softens, and compassion arises naturally, not as a moral effort, but as the spontaneous movement of love seeing itself everywhere. You once believed that others could hurt you, offend you, or stand in your way. But as spiritual sight deepens, you discover that no one truly has the power to disturb your peace. What they express outwardly is only the reflection of their own level of awareness. When you see through that illusion, you stop taking their behavior personally. You begin to understand that every unkind word, every act of ignorance, is a cry for love. And when you answer that cry not with resistance but with presence, something miraculous happens. Your peace begins to awaken peace in them. Without effort, you become a light in their darkness, a mirror reminding them of their own divinity. To see the divine in others is not to deny human imperfection, it is to look beyond it. It is to know that what appears broken is not truly broken, that beneath every shadow there is an unextinguished flame. This way of seeing frees you from the exhausting urge to fix people or to make them align with your understanding. You no longer seek to change anyone, because you know that what you truly love in them is already perfect and needs no correction. What you extend instead is space. Space for grace to work, space for divine intelligence to unfold in its own timing. You become patient, and that patience becomes a silent blessing to everyone you meet. When this awareness governs your relationships, love ceases to be a transaction. You no longer give affection expecting to receive it back. You no longer measure worth by what others offer or withhold. Your love flows without condition because it is not your love at all. It is God's love moving through you. You find yourself forgiving more easily, understanding more quickly, and letting go of offense before it can take root. Even those who once brought you pain now appear as teachers of compassion, instruments through which divine love refines your heart. As this vision matures, you realize that every encounter is sacred. The cashier at the store, the colleague who frustrates you, the friend who misunderstands you, all are opportunities to meet God in disguise. You begin to live with a quiet reverence for everyone you meet, because you never know in what form the divine will appear. Sometimes it speaks through kindness, sometimes through challenge, but always it calls you back to love. When you see others as expressions of the same infinite presence that lives within you, separation disappears. You stop asking, "How should I love this person?" and instead live as love itself. That love does not analyze or compare. It simply shines. It becomes a healing force, softening the hearts of those around you, often without a single word. And as you continue to see with these new eyes, you discover that the world itself begins to look different. Gentler, kinder, more whole. What changed was never them, it was your sight. For to see God in others is to awaken to the truth that God has been seeing through you all along. When divine awareness begins to direct your life, living itself becomes an unspoken prayer. You no longer think of prayer as words offered to a distant God, but as the quiet flow of consciousness attuned to divine will. Each breath, each gesture, each thought becomes an offering of presence. There is no separation between the sacred and the ordinary. Washing a dish, speaking kindly, or walking beneath the sky are all acts of communion. You begin to understand that prayer was never meant to change God's mind, but to align your awareness with the infinite harmony already at work. In that realization, you no longer ask for blessings. You recognize that life itself is the blessing. This awareness transforms service from duty into delight. You stop serving because you should, and instead serve because love cannot help but give. Every task, no matter how small, becomes an opportunity for the divine to reveal itself through you. You might write a letter, care for a child, or speak to a stranger. And behind each act there is the quiet sense, this is God's work being done through me. That simple awareness sanctifies every moment. You no longer divide life into spiritual and worldly, for the presence flows through both without distinction. Work becomes worship, rest becomes prayer, and love becomes your only motivation. When you live in this consciousness, effort fades into grace. Decisions no longer feel like heavy choices but natural unfoldings of divine wisdom. You sense what to do not because you analyze, but because peace points the way. You act with clarity and rest without regret. The heart that once prayed for outcomes now simply listens. It becomes a vessel of quiet gratitude, aware that the divine will always expresses itself perfectly, even when appearances suggest otherwise. This way of living also transforms your relationship with time. You stop rushing towards some imagined future of fulfillment, because you realize fulfillment is already here in this breath, in this instant. The sacred is not waiting somewhere ahead, it is now. When God lives through you, there is no gap between your being and divine purpose. You no longer seek meaning, you live it. Every encounter becomes sacred exchange, every word an instrument of healing, every silence a reminder of eternity. Others will sense this presence, often without knowing why. Your peace becomes their comfort, your stillness their assurance. You no longer need to persuade anyone to believe in God, because the quiet radiance of your life becomes evidence enough. Through you, others begin to feel that love is real, that goodness is not an ideal but a living force. And as they awaken, you recognize that you were never separate from them, that life has always been one infinite prayer rising and returning to itself. In this way, existence becomes effortless devotion. You move not as one seeking God, but as one through whom God experiences his own creation. There is no striving left, no distance to cross, no self to maintain. There is only love in motion, gentle, unending whole. Every breath you take whispers Amen, and every heartbeat becomes the rhythm of divine life expressing itself in perfect harmony. And so, when you truly let God live through you, life ceases to be a search and becomes a revelation. You find that nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be taken away, for the very presence that dreamed creation is breathing within you. In that holy awareness, your striving ends, not because you have given up, but because you have awakened. You realize that every step you take, every word you speak, every heartbeat that sustains you, is God's own expression unfolding in time. You no longer live to reach the divine, you live to reveal it. Peace becomes your natural language. Love your effortless action and silence your highest prayer. The world, once filled with struggle and uncertainty, now shines as the face of the infinite. And you, resting in that presence, understand at last that the life you call your own has never truly been yours. It has always been God's life, moving, loving, and living as you.